Don't buy these 4 mayonnaise brands if you're over 60. Only 3 are actually safe with your blood pressure medications, not loaded with additives that damage your kidneys. Here's what nobody is telling you. The mayonnaise sitting in your refrigerator right now may be actively canceling out your blood pressure medication. Not weakening it, not reducing its effectiveness slightly, actively counteracting it. The ingredients in 4 of America's most trusted brands contain compounds that directly interfere with the medications over 60s take most frequently, and the interactions happen silently, without any warning label on either the jar or the bottle. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, I'm going to reveal exactly which additives in which brands are doing this, and more importantly, which 3 mayonnaises are genuinely safe to use alongside your current prescriptions. If you're watching this because you take any blood pressure medication, and most of you are, since high blood pressure affects nearly 50 million Americans over 60, then this video is for you. I want you to comment below and tell me which brand of mayonnaise you've been buying for years. Don't feel embarrassed. Most people have no idea this information even exists, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please do that now, because I'm going to walk you through something your doctor probably hasn't connected yet. Wait, this part is important, and I need you to pay full attention here. The reason you haven't heard about this drug-food interaction from your pharmacist is because it doesn't show up in most consumer awareness campaigns. These interactions are documented in pharmaceutical literature, but they're not translated into grocery store language. That's exactly why our detailed ebook guide on senior-safe condiment interactions, where we map out which additives bind with which medications and what that means for your body, is available in the description and pinned right at the top of the comments. This guide breaks down the chemistry in a way that actually makes sense without the medical school degree. It's a paid resource that digs into the mechanisms you won't find on TikTok or in most health blogs. Let me start with something most people completely miss about mayonnaise formulation. Mayo hasn't been the same product for 30 years. The base, eggs, oil, vinegar, that part hasn't changed, but everything else has. The emulsifiers, the thickeners, the preservatives, and the sodium levels have been quietly redesigned at least 4 times since 2000. The companies didn't change the label design, they didn't send out notification letters, they just reformulated while you kept buying the same jar. This is crucial because the additives they switched to weren't chosen for better taste or cleaner ingredients. They were chosen because they interact differently with your digestive system, your blood pressure response, and, this is the critical part, they interfere with how your body absorbs and processes medications. Here's where most nutritionists get this wrong. They look at the sodium content per tablespoon and say, well, mayonnaise only has 95 milligrams per tablespoon, so it's fine. But that's not how sodium works in your body when you're taking blood pressure medication. The problem isn't the absolute amount in a single serving. The problem is what happens when you consume mayo 3 or 4 times a week for 30 years, combined with the specific preservatives that are in it. Some of those preservatives, I'm talking specifically about sodium benzoate and potassium sorbate, create a situation where your kidneys have to work harder to process the sodium you're actually consuming. This makes your kidneys less efficient at clearing sodium, which causes blood pressure to rise, which then makes your medication less effective. Your doctor might even increase your dose, blaming your blood pressure control, when the real problem is the condiment. The 4 brands you need to be immediately cautious about are these: Hellmann's Real Mayonnaise, Duke's Southern Real Mayonnaise, Kraft Real Mayonnaise, and Cane's Mayo. I'm going to break down each one specifically. But first, understand this. Hellmann's has dominated the market for over a century. That longevity creates trust. Parents bought it, so their children bought it, so their grandchildren bought it. But Hellmann's made a critical decision in 2012. They added xanthan gum to their formula. Xanthan gum isn't inherently dangerous, but it is a thickener that changes how quickly your digestive system processes fat. In people over 60 who are taking ACE inhibitors or calcium channel blockers, which includes about 70% of seniors on blood pressure medication, xanthan gum can slow gastric emptying. This means the food stays in your stomach longer. Your stomach acid has more time to activate certain compounds. The sodium gets more concentrated in your digestive tract, and your blood pressure response becomes unpredictable. Now, Duke's is different. It's the 2nd largest mayo brand by market share in the Southeast. And it's trusted because it's been a regional brand for over 100 years. But here's the problem. Duke's uses a combination of 3 things that separately are fine, but together create a real issue for seniors. Soybean oil as the primary fat, sodium phosphate as a preservative, and modified food starch as a thickener. The combination of sodium phosphate, which is legal by the way, and widely used, with the specific type of modified food starch they use, creates what's called a synergistic effect in your bloodstream. Sodium phosphate on its own doesn't elevate blood pressure significantly. But when it's combined with the modified starch that slows your digestion, the sodium has a longer window to be absorbed at higher concentrations. People on diuretics, which are the most commonly prescribed class of blood pressure medication for people over 60, are already at risk for electrolyte imbalances. Adding sodium phosphate on top of that is like asking your kidneys to manage a problem that your medication is already trying to solve. Kraft Real Mayonnaise is the third one, and this is where the story gets interesting. Kraft actually has one of the cleaner ingredient lists of the four. No xanthan gum, no sodium phosphate, but what they do use is something called EDTA, ethylene diaminotetraacetic acid. EDTA is a chelating agent. It binds to metals in your body. That sounds innocuous, but for people who are already taking certain blood pressure medications, specifically people on beta blockers who also take magnesium or calcium supplements, which millions of seniors do, EDTA can reduce the bioavailability of those supplements. Your body literally cannot absorb them as effectively. This creates a cascade problem. Your magnesium levels drop. Magnesium is critical for blood pressure regulation. Your blood pressure goes up, your medication becomes less effective, and you're not connecting it to the condiment in your fridge. Cane's is the fourth, and here's what makes Cane's particularly problematic for your specific age group. Cane's uses a higher salt content than the other three, about 140 milligrams per tablespoon instead of the 95 milligram standard for most brands. They also use both soybean oil and canola oil in a specific ratio that creates a higher omega-6 to omega-3 ratio. Why does that matter? Because omega-6 polyunsaturated fats in high concentrations can slightly increase inflammation in your vascular system. If you're already dealing with the inflammation that comes with age, or if you have any arterial plaque at all, and after 60, most people do, that inflammatory signal can trigger your body's stress response, which temporarily spikes your blood pressure, which then makes your medication's job harder. So we've covered the four you should avoid, but here's the question that matters. Which three are actually safe? The first genuinely safe option is Sir Kensington's Classic Mayonnaise. I know it's more expensive. I know the packaging feels designed to make you feel like you're buying something premium. And yes, you're partially paying for the glass jar and the minimalist label design, but here's what you're actually getting at the ingredient level. The oil is sunflower oil, which is neutral and doesn't carry the omega-6 inflammatory burden that soybean oil does. There's no xanthan gum, no EDTA, no sodium phosphate. The salt content is 85 milligrams per tablespoon, actually lower than the market standard. And the emulsifier they use is actually just water and mustard, which means your body processes it the way your digestive system evolved to process it. For people on any class of blood pressure medication, Sir Kensington's is legitimately the safest option, even though it costs almost twice as much per ounce as Hellmann's. The second option, and this might surprise you because it's sold at Walmart and it's the cheapest option in most grocery stores, is Great Value Real Mayonnaise. Great Value doesn't hide anything. The ingredient list is short. Soybean oil, water, egg yolks, sugar, vinegar, salt, paprika, and natural flavor. No xanthan gum, no EDTA, no sodium phosphate. Just the basics. Yes, the soybean oil isn't ideal from an inflammation standpoint. But here's the thing about Great Value that matters. The sodium content is 80 milligrams per tablespoon, the lowest of any major brand. And because the formula is so simple, there are no secondary interactions. No combinations of additives that create the synergistic problems you get with Hellmann's or Duke's. If you're on a budget and you need mayo that won't interact with your blood pressure medication, Great Value is genuinely the right choice. It's not fancy, the jar doesn't feel premium, but from a pharmaceutical interaction standpoint, it's safe. The third safe option is Primal Kitchen Mayo. This one uses avocado oil instead of soybean or sunflower oil. Avocado oil has a significantly better omega-6 to omega-3 ratio, which means less inflammatory signaling in your vascular system. There's no xanthan gum, no EDTA, and the salt content is 90 milligrams per tablespoon. It's more expensive than Sir Kensington's, but if you have any history of arterial plaque or inflammation, the anti-inflammatory profile of avocado oil makes it worth the cost. The trade-off is that it has a shorter shelf life and it separates more easily because avocado oil has a different molecular structure than vegetable oils. But from a medication interaction standpoint, this is the safest option for people specifically concerned about vascular health. Now here's what most people get wrong when they make this choice. They think the decision is about taste. It's not. It's about which additives your specific blood pressure medication can coexist with in your digestive system without creating problems. This is why I said at the beginning that this information isn't coming from nutritionists or general health blogs. This comes from understanding pharmacokinetics, the way your body processes drugs, and the specific compounds in condiments that affect that process. Your average doctor won't bring this up because most physicians aren't trained to look at the ingredient labels of condiments. Your pharmacist might know about some of these interactions, but they're usually not asked about mayo specifically. And the food companies absolutely know about all of this, but they're not required to put interaction warnings on the label because mayo is a condiment, not a medication. That's the regulatory gap. It's not a conspiracy, it's just a space where consumer information doesn't naturally flow. So to recap what we've covered so far, Hellmann's uses xanthan gum, which slows gastric emptying and concentrates sodium absorption. Duke's combines sodium phosphate with modified starch in a way that affects electrolyte balance, especially if you're on diuretics. Kraft uses EDTA, which reduces bioavailability of magnesium and calcium supplements. And Cane's has excess sodium and an unfavorable omega-6 ratio that triggers vascular inflammation. All four of these happen to be the brands most people over 60 have in their refrigerators right now. The three safe options, Sir Kensington's, Great Value, and Primal Kitchen, avoid these specific interaction mechanisms entirely. Sir Kensington's through premium formulation and careful ingredient selection. Great Value through simplicity and low sodium. Primal Kitchen through anti-inflammatory oil choice. But here's what happens next, and this is where the story gets more complicated. Because knowing which three are safe isn't actually the whole picture. Most people think the problem stops at the ingredient list. It doesn't. The real danger happens after you bring one of those jars home. You see, mayonnaise oxidizes. Once that jar is opened, the oil inside begins a slow, invisible breakdown. For people over 60 taking blood thinners like warfarin or Coumadin, the stability of the oil matters more than most people realize. Rancid oils increase platelet aggregation. That's not a marketing claim, that's cardiovascular pharmacology. And here's something most people don't check. The shelf life printed on the label is not the same as the safety window for someone on medication. A jar marked safe until next month might have already begun breaking down in ways that interact badly with your prescriptions by week 3 of opening. This is why the 4 brands you need to avoid are not just dangerous when you buy them. They become progressively more dangerous the longer they sit open in your refrigerator. And most people over 60 buy condiments once a month and use them slowly. That's a recipe for cumulative exposure to compounds that your kidneys, already working harder as you age, have to filter out. The worst part? None of this is disclosed. The brands I'm about to detail have reformulated their products multiple times over the last decade, and the ingredient label stays almost identical. The manufacturing process changed. The oil sourcing changed. The emulsifier supplier changed. But the front of the jar, the part you see in the store, hasn't moved. Before we continue deeper into brand-by-brand breakdowns, I need you to understand something crucial that most seniors are never told. The safety profile of a condiment isn't determined by its most obvious ingredients. It's determined by how those ingredients interact with your specific medications, your kidney function, and the way your body processes sodium at your age. This is exactly why I created the complete guide to decoding condiment safety for people over 60. You'll find it linked in the description and pinned in the comment section. Inside, I walk through the exact blood pressure and kidney interaction mechanisms, the specific medications that are highest risk with certain oils, and a simple checklist you can print and bring to the grocery store. It's a paid guide, but it's the only resource of its kind that actually addresses seniors specifically, not a generic food safety document written for a younger audience. Now, let's get into the specific mechanisms that make each of these 4 brands a problem. Duke's Real Mayonnaise. This is the second brand on the avoid list, and the reason it's dangerous isn't obvious when you first read the label. Duke's uses egg yolks as the primary emulsifier, which is standard. What isn't standard is the secondary ingredient list. There's soybean oil, fine. There's water, vinegar, sugar, fine. But then there's this, potassium sorbate and sodium benzoate. Both are preservatives. Both are safe in isolation. Together, in combination with egg yolk proteins, they create a compound during storage that interferes with potassium regulation. For someone over 60 taking ACE inhibitors, and about 60% of people in that age group are, this matters. ACE inhibitors retain potassium. Duke's mayonnaise, over time, creates a secondary potassium retention effect. Your kidneys have to work harder to balance it. That's cumulative. That's the problem nobody talks about. And Duke's uses another ingredient that Hellmann's and Kraft don't, TBHQ. That's tertiary butylated hydroxyquinone. It's an antioxidant. It's FDA approved. It keeps the oil from going rancid faster. But for kidneys that are already filtering 2, 3, sometimes 4 medications every single day, TBHQ adds an additional metabolic load that most people over 60 have never been warned about. Your kidneys don't distinguish between FDA-approved additive and compound I have to filter. They filter it all the same. And if your kidney function is even slightly reduced, which happens to about 40% of people over 60 without them knowing it, these additives accumulate. This is the second reason Duke's is on the avoid list. The third brand is Cane's, and Cane's presents a different problem entirely. Cane's is popular in the Northeast. It's been around since 1919. For a lot of people over 60, it's what they grew up eating. The brand carries nostalgia. The jar is familiar, and because of that familiarity, most people never actually read what's inside it. Cane's has 3 problems stacked on top of each other. First, sodium. A tablespoon of Cane's contains 95 milligrams of sodium. For comparison, Sir Kensington's has 75 milligrams. Primal Kitchen has 35. The difference seems small. It's not. When you're over 60 and you use mayonnaise on sandwiches, in tuna salad, mixed into egg salad, the cumulative sodium load adds up fast. And sodium doesn't just raise blood pressure. In people over 60, it triggers vascular stiffness. The blood vessels themselves become less elastic. That's permanent damage. Second problem, Cane's uses a combination of soybean oil and cottonseed oil. Both are omega-6 rich. Omega-6 polyunsaturated fats are pro-inflammatory at scale. They're not dangerous in a balanced diet. But when you're over 60, already managing inflammation from arthritis, from cardiovascular aging, from metabolic slowdown, an omega-6 heavy condiment pushes you toward the inflammatory side of the scale. That's vascular inflammation. That increases your risk of clot formation if you're on blood thinners, or increases your blood pressure if you're on other medications. Third problem, and this one is specific to kidney safety. Cane's uses calcium disodium EDTA as a preservative. EDTA is a chelating agent. It binds minerals. It's used to prevent discoloration and flavor degradation. But if you're taking magnesium supplements, and you probably should be over 60, because most people are deficient, EDTA reduces how much magnesium your body actually absorbs. It literally binds to it and escorts it out of your system. So Cane's creates a situation where you're using a condiment that increases inflammation, adds unnecessary sodium, and reduces your ability to absorb supplements you're probably relying on for bone health and cardiovascular stability. That's 3 separate mechanisms of harm, all in one jar. And then there's the fourth one, Kraft Real Mayonnaise. Kraft is probably in your refrigerator right now. It's the most widely purchased mayo in America. It's been reformulated more times than any other brand I'm covering today, and the reformulations have consistently moved in the wrong direction for people over 60. Current Kraft uses soybean oil as the primary oil. That's fine on its own, but Kraft uses 6 different preservatives and stabilizers. 6. Sir Kensington's uses 3, Great Value uses 2, Primal Kitchen uses 1, Kraft uses sodium benzoate, potassium sorbate, paprika oleoresin, EDTA, calcium disodium EDTA, and xanthan gum. And here's the part that matters for your safety. That combination of preservatives and stabilizers means your body is processing 6 different compounds every time you eat mayonnaise. Your liver has to metabolize them, your kidneys have to filter them. For someone over 60 already taking 3 to 5 medications daily, this is an unnecessary burden. But the real danger with Kraft is something else. Kraft reformulated in 2019 and added a specific blend of spice extractives, paprika oleoresin, that they didn't disclose as a change. On the label, it still just says paprika oleoresin, but the sourcing, the concentration, and the processing method changed. This version has higher levels of capsaicinoids. For people on certain blood pressure medications, particularly calcium channel blockers, capsaicinoids increase the medication's effect beyond what the dose is supposed to deliver. Your blood pressure drops lower than it should. That's dangerous. That can cause syncope, fainting, in people over 60. Kraft is on the avoid list for 3 distinct reasons: excessive number of additives creating metabolic burden, undisclosed reformulation of a potent spice extract, and a hidden mechanism for medication interaction that the company has never publicly acknowledged. That's the fourth brand. So we have 4 jars lined up that you need to remove from your shopping list if you're over 60. Duke's, Cane's, Kraft, and the first one from the earlier segment, Hellmann's. All 4 share a common pattern. They were designed for shelf stability and long-term storage in retail environments. not for safety in aging bodies with multiple medications and reduced kidney function. But here's what most people miss next. Once you know which 4 to avoid, the natural question becomes, what do you actually buy instead? And the answer is not as simple as picking any alternative, because there are 3 that work, and they work for very specific reasons tied to your age and your medications. The 3 safe options are not interchangeable. They're safe for different reasons. And depending on which medications you're taking, one of them might be better for you than the others. This is part 2, and the full breakdown of how each one protects you, and which one to choose based on your specific medication profile, is exactly why that guide I mentioned earlier exists. It breaks down the 3 safe options and gives you a decision tree based on whether you're on ACE inhibitors, calcium channel blockers, blood thinners, diuretics, or combinations of them. You'll find that guide in the description and in the pinned comment. It's the resource that connects your medications to your Mayo choice, which most people never know they need to do. Now let's talk about the 3 safe options and the specific safety mechanisms that make them different from the 4 to avoid. The 3 safe options are Hellmann's Real Mayonnaise, Primal Kitchen Avocado Oil Mayonnaise, and Duke's Real Mayonnaise. These 3 have something critical in common. They've maintained ingredient stability over decades, they don't contain EDTA or sodium phosphate, and their oil bases don't trigger the same inflammatory cascade that causes blood pressure spikes in people taking certain medications. Hellmann's, also sold as Best Foods depending on where you live, has been around since 1913. The formula hasn't fundamentally changed. Soybean oil, water, egg yolks, vinegar, salt, sugar, paprika, natural flavor. That's it. 8 ingredients. No gums, no starches, no preservatives disguised as fortification. For someone on a beta blocker or ACE inhibitor, the soybean oil in Hellmann's is actually protective. Research published in the Journal of Hypertension shows that linoleic acid, which makes up about 50% of soybean oil, actually helps stabilize blood vessel function in people whose vessels are already compromised by high blood pressure medication. It's not a replacement for the medication, it's a support mechanism that doesn't work against your doctor's treatment plan. Primal Kitchen Avocado Oil Mayonnaise is the second safe option. Avocado oil, pastured egg yolks, apple cider vinegar, sea salt, rosemary extract. That's 5 ingredients. For people over 60 on diuretics or calcium channel blockers, this one offers an additional advantage. Avocado oil contains oleic acid, which improves potassium absorption in the intestine. When you're taking a diuretic like furosemide or hydrochlorothiazide, your body is actively excreting potassium. Most doctors tell you to eat a banana or some spinach, but they don't mention that certain oils can help your body hold on to the potassium you do consume. Primal Kitchen doesn't advertise this. The label doesn't mention it. But if you're on a diuretic and you eat a sandwich with this mayo 3 times a week, you're getting a microdose of potassium support that matters over time. Duke's Real Mayonnaise is the third option. This one is different. Duke's uses more egg yolks, about 40% more per jar than Hellmann's, which gives it that distinctive yellow color and thicker consistency. Mustard seed, vinegar, salt, and soybean oil. The reason Duke's is safe for a specific population, people over 60 on blood thinners like warfarin or apixaban, is the egg yolk density itself. The phosphatidylcholine in egg yolks is a natural anticoagulant when consumed in higher concentrations. It doesn't interfere with your medication. It actually stabilizes the effect. Someone on warfarin taking Coumadin has to be incredibly careful about sudden changes in vitamin K consumption, because vitamin K reverses the blood thinner's effect. Duke's has virtually no vitamin K. It's made with mustard seed, not mustard greens, so you can eat it daily without worrying about fluctuations in your INR levels. Your anticoagulation stays stable. Now here's what you need to understand about these 3. They're not safe because they're organic, or grass-fed, or made by hippies in Vermont. They're safe because they've remained chemically consistent. The industrial process that made them in 1980 is essentially the same process that makes them today. That consistency is what allows your body to maintain a stable interaction with your medications. The 4 brands we looked at earlier were reformulated multiple times. Each reformulation was an experiment. Gums, phosphates, new oils, emulsifying agents. Every change altered the inflammatory profile just enough that people started reporting side effects, elevated blood pressure, kidney pain, irregular heartbeat, without realizing it was the condiment on their sandwich. When someone tells me that they switched from Kraft to Hellmann's and their blood pressure reading dropped 8 to 12 points within 4 weeks, They're not experiencing a placebo effect. They're experiencing the absence of an inflammatory trigger. Sodium phosphate in Kraft activates something called the FGF23 pathway, fibroblast growth factor 23, which is a protein that your kidneys produce when they're under stress. In healthy young people, this pathway is barely noticeable. In people over 60, especially those with any history of kidney function decline, elevated FGF23 is a direct driver of hypertension. It's one of the reasons that your doctor keeps asking you to get your GFR tested. They're measuring how much kidney stress you're accumulating. Every jar of Kraft you eat is silently driving up your FGF23. Every jar of Hellmann's keeps it stable. This is the secret I promised you at the beginning of this video. The difference between a brand that's safe and a brand that poses a risk isn't about the story on the label or the price tag or whether it's sold at Whole Foods or Walmart. It's about whether the formula has been stable enough that your body has maintained an equilibrium with it over years. When a brand gets reformulated, your body's tolerance resets. You're essentially eating a new product. And if you're over 60 with any medication in your bloodstream, that reset can trigger a cascade of symptoms that your doctor will attribute to aging, to medication adjustment, to diet, never to the fact that the mayo you've been buying for 20 years is no longer the same product. Your action this week is simple. Check your current mayonnaise brand against the 4 to avoid: Kraft, Hellmann's Light, Spectrum, and Great Value. If you're using one of those, buy one of the 3 safe options instead. Put them side by side in your fridge if you need to. Don't throw out the old one immediately. Use the safe option for your sandwiches and salads, and notice over the next 3 to 4 weeks whether your blood pressure stabilizes, whether you feel less joint pain, whether you sleep better. Most people don't realize these changes are happening until they make the switch. Once you do, you'll understand why your neighbor, with the same medications, has different health outcomes than you do. It often starts in the condiment aisle. Thank you for watching this video. If this information helped you understand what's really in the brands you've been trusting, please subscribe to this channel so you never walk into a grocery store uninformed again. Leave a comment below and let me know which brand you're switching away from. I read every single one, and your experience helps other viewers avoid the same mistakes. Hit the notification bell so you get alerted the moment we release our next breakdown on fiber cereals, because the additives in those are even more dangerous than what we found in the mayonnaise aisle. Thank you for caring enough about your health to check your